You wake up one day, not to the usual humdrum of your morning routine, but to an unsettling silence. No noise, no distraction, just an overwhelming awareness that something is wrong. It's not the world outside, it's inside you. For a moment, the rush of thoughts, the frantic buzz of life, disappears, and in that space, you realize something profound. You've been running all along, running from yourself, from the truths you've buried so deep that even you couldn't hear them anymore. But now, you hear them, loudly, and they're asking a question that stops you in your tracks. Why do we suffer? You may have answered this question 100 times before, perhaps with cliché phrases or neatly packaged beliefs passed down through generations. You've accepted suffering as part of the human condition. But deep down you know that those answers never truly touched the heart of the matter. No one ever asked, what if suffering isn't just something we endure, but something we must face? What if suffering is the key to understanding who we really are? Fyodor Dostoyevsky, the towering literary genius, seemed to understand this better than most. In his most profound works, he didn't shy away from the darkness of the human soul. He embraced it, and through his exploration of the inner depths of human suffering, he uncovered an essential truth that remains hidden from most of us. Suffering is not a random, chaotic part of life. It is in fact woven into the very fabric of our existence. But here's the catch. We live in a world that desperately seeks comfort. We avoid pain, numb ourselves, and put up barriers to escape the truth. We spend our days chasing happiness like it's a distant dream. But Dostoyevsky's genius was in seeing something much deeper, that in the darkest moments of our lives, suffering isn't just a burden. It's the doorway to understanding ourselves, to uncovering the truth about existence. And only by walking through that door can we begin to truly live. Does this resonate with you? Do you feel the stirring of an uncomfortable truth? It's the truth that has been sitting just beneath the surface of your consciousness, waiting to be seen. And here's the paradox. The more we resist suffering, the more we perpetuate it. The question we must ask is, can we break free from the cycle of pain and find meaning within it? Before we dive deeper into this, if this question has sparked something inside you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because what we're about to explore is not just about philosophy, it's about transforming the way you see your own life. Now, let's continue this journey of discovery. You see, Dostoyevsky's insight is far from being some abstract, academic exercise. It is a direct challenge to how we live our lives today. A challenge that asks us to reconsider everything we think we know about happiness, suffering, and the very meaning of existence. So why do we suffer, and what does it mean to truly embrace that suffering, rather than running from it? Stick around, and we'll uncover the hidden psychological forces that shape our reality. This is just the beginning. Let's dig deeper into this question. Why do we suffer? The answer, Dostoyevsky suggests, isn't simple. It's not about fate, or punishment, or even the random chaos of life. No. It's far more intricate than that. Suffering, for Dostoyevsky, is a direct result of something much darker, something many of us aren't even aware of. It's the gap between who we are and who we think we should be. This gap creates tension, confusion, and eventually, pain. We live in a world that encourages us to create an image of ourselves, a polished, perfect self, constantly striving for improvement, success, and happiness. We're told that if we just work hard enough, we can erase our flaws, control our emotions, and attain a life free from hardship. But deep down, we know this is an illusion. We know it because despite all our striving, we continue to feel restless, unfulfilled, and anxious. The truth is, we're suffering because we're out of alignment with who we really are. We suppress parts of ourselves, parts that we've been taught to ignore or even reject. Our anger, our fear, our vulnerability. Dostoyevsky was acutely aware of this. His characters are constantly struggling to reconcile their inner conflicts, torn between their higher ideals and their baser instincts. These contradictions, these internal battles, are what create the psychological suffering that is at the heart of the human experience. In many ways, Dostoyevsky was a forerunner to the psychological insights we encounter today. Think of Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self, the parts of our personality that we push into the unconscious, because we believe they are unacceptable. These are the hidden fragments of ourselves that we can't bear to acknowledge. And it's precisely in confronting these aspects that we begin to understand why we suffer. Jung's work builds on the idea that to become whole we must first confront the darker parts of our psyche, the parts we hide from ourselves. But confronting the shadow isn't easy. It's a deeply uncomfortable process, one that requires immense courage. It's why most people avoid it. It's why we settle for superficial solutions to our suffering. Meditation apps, self-help books, distractions. But none of these methods get to the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem lies in our relationship to suffering itself. Our culture teaches us to resist and avoid suffering at all costs. Yet the paradox is that suffering is often the very thing that can lead us to wisdom and growth. We don't need to eradicate suffering. We need to understand it. Dostoyevsky understood this in a way that most modern thinkers have forgotten. He realized that our attempts to escape suffering only create more of it. Our resistance to facing the depths of our own pain only locks us into a cycle of denial and self-doubt. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche expanded on this idea, introducing the concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. Nietzsche believed that true freedom and strength come not from avoiding suffering, but from embracing it. It's in this paradoxical acceptance of suffering that we begin to find meaning. It is through pain that we are forced to confront who we truly are. The acceptance of suffering opens us up to the possibility of transformation, but only if we stop resisting. Dostoyevsky knew that this is where the true battle lies. The suffering he portrays in his novels isn't just physical or external, it's psychological. It's the internal conflict between the self we want to project to the world and the self we are truly afraid to show. And that fear of our own vulnerability, our flaws, our contradictions, keeps us trapped in a cycle of endless suffering. But why? Why do we fear these parts of ourselves so much? The answer, according to existential philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, is that we are afraid of confronting the meaninglessness that lies at the core of existence. We hide behind societal norms, personal achievements, and distractions because we don't want to face the reality that we have to create our own meaning. The suffering we experience is in part a result of our avoidance of this fundamental truth. But what if we could reframe suffering? What if instead of seeing it as something to escape, we saw it as a doorway to something much greater? This is the question Dostoyevsky's works compel us to ask. He understood the human condition on a level few others have. His characters don't simply suffer for the sake of it. They suffer because they are searching for something deeper, something real, something transcendent. As we reflect on this, it becomes clear. The problem isn't suffering itself. It's how we relate to it. Our avoidance, our resistance, our attempts to escape it. All of these only deepen our misery. The question now becomes, how do we shift our relationship with suffering? And is it possible to transform suffering into something meaningful, something that can lead to profound growth and insight? Stay with me, because the answer may not be what you expect. Let's explore the subtle yet insidious consequences of our refusal to confront suffering head-on. You may not even realize it, but your refusal to acknowledge your pain, the moments of vulnerability, the past traumas, the internal contradictions, may be silently shaping your life in ways you can't yet understand. First, consider how your relationships are affected. Every time you suppress a painful emotion or try to hide a part of yourself you deem unacceptable, you create a wall between you and others. This wall might appear as emotional distance, a fear of intimacy, or a desperate need for validation. The more you resist your inner darkness, the more difficult it becomes to connect authentically with the world around you. Relationships are built on vulnerability, yet if you're constantly trying to suppress your true self, you prevent others from seeing you as you truly are. You end up relating to others not as you are, but as a carefully curated persona. This in turn feeds into a cycle of loneliness, disconnection, and deeper suffering. But the consequences go beyond relationships. On a neurological level, suppressing emotions and avoiding suffering creates what researchers call psychological repression. This is when painful emotions or thoughts are pushed into the unconscious mind because they are too difficult or overwhelming to process. Repression doesn't make the pain go away, it simply stores it, hidden, in the darker corners of the psyche, only to resurface later in unexpected ways. You might feel anxious without knowing why, or become unreasonably angry over small things. The emotional energy you suppress doesn't vanish. It builds up, distorting your reality in ways that feel beyond your control. Neurologically, repression also activates the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, especially fear. The more you suppress, the more hyperactive this brain region becomes, leading to heightened emotional responses. Over time, you become trapped in a feedback loop. Suppressing your feelings triggers emotional stress, which in turn makes it harder for you to confront and process them. It's a vicious cycle that, left unchecked, can lead to chronic anxiety, depression, and a diminished sense of well-being. But the most dangerous consequence of all, the slow erosion of your sense of self. As you continue to deny parts of yourself, the parts you deem flawed, weak, or unworthy, you create a fragmented identity. One part of you is living the life you show to others, while another part hides in the shadows, waiting to be acknowledged. This division creates a constant tension within you, a feeling that something is missing, that something is out of place. It's as if you're always running on empty, always striving for something that you can't quite reach. The more you avoid acknowledging your suffering, the less authentic you become. You may achieve success, but it will feel hollow. You may be surrounded by people, but it will feel lonely. You may fill your days with distractions, but the emptiness will persist. And here's the cruel irony. In trying to escape suffering, you've created an even deeper, more existential kind of suffering, one that is not visible to the outside world, but is deeply felt inside. This unseen, quiet suffering is precisely what Dostoyevsky sought to uncover in his novels. His characters, Raskolnikov from Crime and Punishment, the underground man from Notes from Underground, and others are trapped in this cycle of inner conflict. They try to escape their pain by fleeing from themselves, by rationalizing their behavior, by creating justifications for their suffering. But the more they flee, the more they deepen their anguish. Dostoyevsky shows us, with haunting clarity, that this is the core of human misery, our resistance to confronting the full truth of who we are. But what if we could break free from this cycle? What if instead of continuing to flee from suffering, we leaned into it, faced it, embraced it, and used it as a tool for transformation? This is where Dostoyevsky's philosophy leads us, to a radical acceptance of suffering, not as a curse, but as a doorway to something far more profound than we can imagine. It's easy to see suffering as something that hinders us, but what if suffering was actually the catalyst for our personal growth? What if through suffering, we could reclaim our authentic selves, confront our deepest fears, and find meaning in a world that often seems indifferent to our pain? This is the power of Dostoyevsky's insight. Only through suffering can we begin to truly understand ourselves. But this process requires us to confront not just our pain, but the lies we've been telling ourselves about who we are and who we want to be. It's time to shatter the illusion that suffering is something to escape. Imagine, just for a moment, that everything you've been told about pain, about the need to avoid it, is a lie. What if, instead of seeing suffering as a sign of failure, you saw it as a powerful transformative force? What if suffering could actually be the key to unlocking your potential, to discovering your true self in ways you never imagined? The rebellion begins in this very shift of perspective. And it's not just a simple reframing, It's a radical, almost revolutionary act. When you choose to stop running from your pain, to stop masking it with distractions, to stop numbing it with superficial comforts, you open the door to something far more profound than any fleeting pleasure. You begin the journey of reclaiming your authenticity. Think of Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, who wrote about the concept of logotherapy, the search for meaning. Frankl's experience in the concentration camps showed him that those who survived the deepest suffering were not necessarily the strongest, but those who could find meaning in their pain. They did not avoid it, or deny it, or turn to shallow distractions. They embraced it, faced it head-on, and in doing so they transformed it into something that gave their lives purpose. Frankl's central insight was this: suffering is not a burden we must endure in silence. It is a call to action, a call to find meaning, even in the darkest of circumstances. But this doesn't mean we should just accept suffering passively. Far from it. Embracing suffering is not about resigning yourself to a life of pain. It's about choosing to transcend it, to rise above it, and to use it as a stepping stone toward personal transformation. This is where Dostoyevsky's genius comes into play. His characters don't simply endure suffering, they transform it. They go through hell, but in the process, they come out the other side stronger, more self-aware, and more fully alive. Take, for example, the transformation of Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. In the beginning, Raskolnikov is trapped in a cycle of guilt, shame, and intellectual arrogance. He believes that he can justify murder for a higher purpose, but as his suffering intensifies, he begins to realize the futility of his rationalizations. The more he tries to suppress his guilt, the more it consumes him, until he can no longer escape it. It is only by confronting the full weight of his suffering, by accepting his wrongdoing and facing the consequences, that he is able to achieve a kind of spiritual rebirth. Raskolnikov's story is not just about punishment, it's about redemption. It's about the realization that suffering, when faced head-on, becomes the crucible in which we are purified. Dostoyevsky presents a profound paradox. We are not freed from suffering by avoiding it, but by confronting it with honesty and courage. Only then can we move beyond it, towards something greater than ourselves. This is the essence of rebellion, a defiance against the societal norms that teach us to hide our pain, to cover up our vulnerability, and to suppress the very things that make us human. The rebellion is not about rejecting suffering, but about radically transforming our relationship to it. It's about turning the tables on the conventional wisdom that happiness is found in comfort and pleasure, and instead realizing that true fulfillment often comes from the most unlikely places: pain, struggle, and self-confrontation. In this rebellion, you reclaim your agency. You choose not to let life's hardships define you, but to define your hardships. You choose to learn from them, to grow through them, to let them shape you into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The power doesn't lie in escaping your suffering, it lies in how you respond to it. Throughout history, we've seen countless examples of people who have turned their suffering into something extraordinary. Take Nelson Mandela, who after spending 27 years in prison, emerged not with bitterness, but with a message of peace and reconciliation. He could have chosen to let his suffering turn him into a victim, to wallow in resentment. But instead, he transformed it into a force for change, for healing. He turned the pain of his imprisonment into a call for justice that echoed throughout the world. Or consider the story of Malala Yousafzai, who after surviving a brutal assassination attempt, refused to let her suffering define her. Instead, she turned it into a platform for advocating girls' education, creating a movement that has inspired millions across the globe. These are stories of rebellion, rebellions against the forces that try to keep us down, that tell us to suffer in silence. These are stories of people who took their pain and used it as the fuel to ignite something far greater than themselves. This is the shift in perspective that Dostoyevsky invites us to explore. The suffering that we run from can be the very thing that leads us to our deepest purpose. It's not about avoiding pain, it's about finding meaning in it. It's about understanding that the struggle is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced, as it is through the struggle that we are forged. So how do you break free? You begin by choosing to look your pain in the face. You confront it, you feel it, you understand it, not as something that defines you, but as something that can teach you. You stop running from the uncomfortable, the dark, the messy parts of yourself, and instead, you face them. You let them show you the truth. This is the rebellion, to stop living in fear of your suffering, and start living through it. And when you do, you'll find that suffering loses its power to control you. You will no longer be trapped by it. Instead, it will become a tool that sharpens your understanding of yourself, a tool that propels you toward a life that is fully yours, not a life dictated by the fear of pain. Here's the truth that Dostoyevsky understood, and that few of us are willing to confront. The key to transforming suffering isn't in escaping it. It's in understanding that suffering is inseparable from growth. We're not just meant to endure pain, we're meant to transcend it. The ultimate realization is this: the only way to truly live is to embrace the suffering that comes with being human. When we stop seeing pain as an obstacle and start seeing it as the very thing that shapes us, we unlock the door to an entirely new kind of freedom. This shift in perspective is what separates those who remain stuck in cycles of avoidance from those who rise above. Like Raskolnikov, like Frankl, and like Mandela, we must learn to see our suffering not as a mark of failure, but as the crucible through which we are forged into something greater. The more we resist this truth, the more we prolong our misery. But when we accept it, we begin to truly live. So the question is, will you continue to run from the pain, or will you face it, understand it, and in doing so unlock the greatest version of yourself? The power lies within you to choose, and in that choice lies the freedom to transform your suffering into something extraordinary. Now, the decision is yours.